Hello, hello, my beautiful soul, and welcome back. Today we are diving into the divine masculine and divine feminine templates because we are at such a beautiful time on the planet where there is truly a reclamation of the architecture of both the divine masculine and divine feminine. And it's the most beautiful thing to experience and witness. I actually want to cry right now because I think every single one of us has experienced the lower aspects of both of these dynamics, and it's incredible to experience the higher aspects and the truth of what the masculine and feminine represent. And as I'm diving into this, I just want to acknowledge, as I've said before, regardless of your gender, we all have both. So you may resonate more with the masculine or more with the feminine. You may have experienced, when I talk about like a lower feminine aspect, you may have experienced that through a masculine body. So it interchanges, but the masculine and feminine architecture themselves stays the same. So ideally, our inner union and our inner healing journey leads us to healing both the masculine and feminine sides within ourselves, which is what brings harmony and balance externally. Because everything that we attract in the external reality is a direct reflection of what's going on inside. And that seems like a perfect place to start this, because when I reflect back to growing up or early teenage years even, and I think of the traits that I was attracting or the characteristics of the people that were surrounding me, it was a lot of the lower masculine and the lower feminine energies that were playing out. And we can say that that just came with the time. I definitely believe that's part of it. Part of it's probably just like environment and who you are surrounded by. But we're at a place now because so many beautiful human beings are doing the inner work and are continuing to ascend and rise above the old paradigms and the old ways of being, rise above the illusions of what we have been taught is normal and acceptable behaviors. We are catalyzing a shift in one another and in the collective at large to continue to increase our expectation, increase our standard of what we want to settle for, what we want to believe is possible. And that is such a beautiful thing. So the lower masculine and lower feminine energies that we encounter a lot of probably growing up. You may still be in a cycle of that right now, or seeing that in your life play out. You may just be like very aware of it at this time. And this is such a beautiful place to be because, as I said, the more you continue to connect to the divine traits within yourself and anchor them in as your truth. And the way I see it is either bringing these parts of you back online or kind of like recollecting these lost pieces, okay? But as you do it, you'll continue to notice huge shifts of who you attract and how people rise up in their caliber to match you. And more than that, you'll just notice how great you feel within yourself because you're finally in this balanced, harmonious state. So there has been many wars on consciousness. There has been many battles and attempts to keep the masculine and feminine fighting and not getting along with one another and continuing to like butt heads and belittle and be in the lower programming that's pulling and tearing down and taking away or siphoning instead of like filling and rising up, supporting one another and coming into that harmonious inner and outer union, the Hieros Gamos template. So the lower masculine is so much of the programming regarding the force, the hustle, the striving for success at the expense of humanity, at the expense of emotions and feelings, and the feminine, that soul, right? The lower feminine is very much about judgment. What's that noise? I don't know what that was. You probably didn't even hear it, but like judgment, criticism, condemnation, that kind of belittling, berating, and dragging someone into the depths of her despair with her. Whereas the masculine could be more of that also intense anger and condemnation, right? We see a lot of that in religions in terms of the father that we are taught to fear and to literally be terrified of the God, of the creator, right? Because of how, condemning he is and how much he looks down upon us with this shame for our mistakes. That's definitely more of the lower template. Okay, where was I going with that? When you look at levels of consciousness and the ways that we're operating within them, if this is what we've been taught to think is normal, then typically as your subconscious gets programmed as a child, you just adopt these beliefs and these behaviors, and you continue to repeat the cycle. And that's been part of the attempt on this planet to keep the consciousness so low, which is the reasons that all our programming on movies, media, music, TV is constantly pushing more of the toxic traits. Even thinking of any single, rom-com or love story movie, it's usually a pretty toxic love that is being portrayed. It's usually a very needy, whiny, collapsed feminine who is incapable on her own, as well as possibly a more, I don't even know, what would be like the standard man in these movies. Clearly I haven't watched any in a long time. But it's like it's portraying something that's not healthy is the easiest way, and it keeps me from going on a huge tangent into movies. The healthiest templates are those that are organic, and they actually are innate to us because it's how we were designed before the programming, right? Before we were infiltrated with this current level of what we see around us. So the organic template is very much the unconditional love. It's very much about interdependence. I think that's the word I want, where we cohabitate together and work together. It's not an independent feminist movement that is looking down upon the masculine, because once again, that's a very lower feminine side to be on. It's not the masculine's fault. It's like there's a bigger thing going on here. So the feminist movement isn't helping in that way. And this hyper independence for women to be equal as men, as though we were created the exact same with the exact same traits and strengths and gifts, that's far, far from the truth. And you can see a healthy feminine energy and a healthy masculine energy and acknowledge that there are very different strengths that they bring to the table, and yet they balance each other perfectly because that's how they were designed. So the lower feminine is like looking down on the masculine for not being good enough or not doing more or not meeting all of her needs or not filling her codependency. And that's not a healthy design. obviously. But the interdependence, the fact that we can not be playing out codependent cycles. Because actually, when you look at either of these dynamics, what it typically leads to in the lower level templating, right, of lower masculine or lower feminine, is that it either leads to more codependence or more unworthiness, right? When you feel like you're being berated or looked down upon or shamed, you're going to feel less and less worthy. You're going to collapse more into your pain. You're going to get stuck in the thought loops of the reasons why you don't measure up or all the things that are wrong with you. You're probably not showing up at your highest, right? And we see so much of the ways that on top of that, then men have been taught to see women through things like pornography, through things like the media and music, and the ways women are just bodies and not worth respecting and should just be like used and abused and then tossed aside. So the consciousness of the lower masculine is incredibly deeply wounded. And you have to think, and I've thought about it a lot, because clearly, you have to think that, like, for a man to see someone else that way, he must be very deeply wounded himself. Because, again, when you see, or when someone is connected deep to their heart and soul, they're so filled with unconditional love. And as babies, I believe that's how we, in a perfect world, would come in. As we come in, we obviously garner a lot of traumas from both our parents' sides. There's a lot in our genetics as well. So as each generation continues to heal and clear these things, the new generations will be birthed in with less and less layers of this trauma being passed down. But in order for a man to look at a woman and want to suppress her in that way or use and abuse her in that way, there has to be a deep wound within his own psyche and his own consciousness to think that that's acceptable. And we can take it so far as to say that probably most children don't have a lot of those thoughts or beliefs. And they play, they get along, there's like none of this yet. And it's as we start to get older that as the programming continues to sink in and your subconscious is forming until 7 or 8 years old, you're starting to think these things are normal because it's being pushed on you every which way. And then you adopt this as your truth. And I'll speak to a lower feminine example quickly because I played competitive sports for as long as I can remember. And I always played team sports, which is interesting. I think I would have been like insanely good at solo sports because I am very independent. And then, I don't know, just all the reasons, but I digress. Every single team I played on had the most dramatic parents and experiences. I can't even explain the levels of trauma and some of the mothers, the things they would say about me or the things they would say about some of the other teammates because they wanted their daughters to play more. Like the really nasty, dark feminine that was coming through. And as a girl, that just was normal to me. That, like, I guess this is how women treat one another. Like, I don't understand. I personally could have cared less if I was on the court. I didn't even really want to be there. I wanted to be like off with the flowers or something. But this normalization, because these mothers were so wounded and they're fighting to try to get the best for their children, and yet in the process, very disconnected from anyone else in their wake, like, it just goes on and on and on. So where that leads me is to the transition to more of the divine masculine and divine feminine archetypes, and the ways that as you continue healing this and shifting what you believe is normal, you will start to attract better. So I was called to talk about this today because I just finished a beautiful quantum healing hypnosis, and I was just connecting, and I felt so held by the Mother, Father, God. So both the masculine and feminine aspects of the Creator. And it just felt like this unconditionally loving energy, this protective energy, this like strength and stability in it, safety for me to relax and to really trust that I was okay and that I'm supported and, all the things. And it's something that I wish more people got to experience all the time. Because again, if our parents had traumas, which they all did, then likely as children, we might not have even had that healthy mother-father dynamic, which plays out as you continue to get older and you've normalized a certain thing. And so then you start to be more attracted to that, or you think that is okay, and that's what you continue to stay stuck in the loop in. So as I've done this work over the years on rewriting what I believe is normal for masculine and what I believe is normal for feminine, and really focusing on the higher level aspects of both, it's like bringing yourself back home and feeling complete within yourself, where, as I said, I'm no longer in a independence, and I have been hyper independent. I still am. I always will be. But before, years ago, it was more with like a chip on my shoulder and like from that feminine wounding. Versus now, it's like I've integrated my own inner masculine to a point where I feel safe to protect myself, and I feel safe to trust, and I can take the daily action and be in integrity to the things that I desire, and be that for myself first, while then also attracting that externally. And as someone who has experienced countless traumas with men, as well as with women, but with like assault and harassment and rape and all these things, where for a long time I believed that that was just what masculine energy and masculine beings were always going to do, that that was like what I had to just accept and tolerate on the planet. To see that as I've changed it within myself, and I've basically, using quantum healing and subconscious reprogramming, I've written out the lower dynamics. And I've done it so many times that it's gone. It's like that doesn't exist. And I'm personally not even available for it. Obviously, I do still see it. Like, we still see it with leaders and we still see it in certain areas. But in terms of my personal vortex and the field that I have around myself, I have not attracted someone who matches any of those things anymore. Partly because I don't go to lower vibrational places where that consciousness is hanging out, such as bars or clubs or different things like that. So I'm taking like conscious action to not be in those same places. But also partly because the energy that I hold and the energetic signature that I've now anchored in for myself is not a match. So those kinds of beings can't get access to me, right? And if they try, if someone were to try, it's like so clear immediately what the intentions are that I know exactly how to put the guards up, protect, and it's like they're repelled and sent away. There's just no access to go any further. Likewise, in terms of the feminine aspect, I have attracted in so many incredible soul sisters over the last few years from doing this deeper reprogramming work and connecting to the template of the divine feminine energy and the loving, supportive sisterhood where it's safe to share and we want to see each other thriving, and there isn't this competition or this scarcity wound that the lower feminine tends to have, of thinking that if another woman has success or has the man or has the life, that it means she can't, and so she wants to like sneak in there and steal it away from her, right? So many things that were programmed in, that we have been taught. And it's so beautiful to get to experience what I've always wanted. So my invitation and share for you to wrap this up is getting very clear on what certain patterns you're maybe still attracting in people, or not even attracting, but noticing. You might be at a job right now where you're just in this vortex of people and they're resonating at a certain frequency. They have these certain habits or patterns, right? Old friend groups of mine where it was just the gossip and drama. And I was like, this just feels so gross to me. This is not how I want to spend my time, and it brings me down. So maybe that's an example. So start paying attention of what is actually around you, and are these people embodying the lower or the higher level traits? And it's not from a judgment place, it's just from an awareness place of, is this truly something I want to be surrounded by? And then realize that you are so capable of calling in better and different and more by becoming it first. So this is where it's not about judgment, but it's about realizing like, yeah, this doesn't feel good for me anymore, and I'm actually ready to level up in terms of what it is I want to attract, what I want to feel each day, who I want to be surrounded by. This is all stuff that I teach inside my Connect bundle, which is one of my quantum healing courses, and I dive into the divine masculine, the divine feminine archetypes way deeper, and how to actually program those in so that you start to connect to that template. There is a lot of work around the mother and father wound healing, so that the things that were normalized for you in your childhood, or potentially the ways that your parents showed up and didn't meet your needs, if that is continuing to play out in your relationships now, or in your own self-esteem or insecurities, unworthiness, there is some amazing trainings and hypnosis recordings to help with that. And reconnecting to God as the eternal, loving mother, father. So seeing those higher level aspects of what is possible and what it is you want to call in and be surrounded by and connected with. And it has been absolutely profound in my life. And I cannot explain enough how deeply your reality shifts when you do the work to shift the inner stuff, right? And also just when you realize you're worthy of better. So knowing that, yes, there are people still operating at the lower consciousness, but I'm beyond that now. I don't want to tolerate that. I don't want to give that time or space or energy. So I'm going to have healthy self-protection and boundaries and self-worth and call in better and close those old chapters. I'm no longer going to allow this to loop and repeat, because it's not serving me and it's not actually serving anyone. And when you do this, you embody the next level version, and you then are actually just showing people what's possible. So I've seen it many times where people like notice me handling things differently or reacting in different ways than maybe a lower feminine would. And it's like so interesting. It's like so intriguing. And they're kind of like, oh, why didn't she react the way like someone else would? But it's because I've done all this deep work on myself and I feel way more connected to my higher self and these higher aspects. And by no means am I perfect, I still fall back. So, not at all putting myself on a pedestal with this because there's still so much more to do. But it's just beautiful how we get to exemplify it, and that is how we create the massive changes on the planet. That is how we create more and more of this as the new normal. And I'm a firm believer that this is going to shift, and future generations are going to have access to better programming, better role models in how a healthy masculine and a healthy feminine looks, both as separate beings and both as just like the inner healthy masculine, the inner healthy feminine, how this shows up. And it's in that role modeling, it's in that being the example that you really do teach other people how to treat you. Because you're like, I will no longer tolerate that. Here is my standard. You can rise up to meet me here. Or if not, that's okay. And I'm sending you love, but I'm not going to drop down to what you think is okay. Because I don't believe that's an okay way to treat someone or what to say, etc. And your standard then determines the trajectory of your relationships and your reality. So I'm going to leave this here. If you want to dive into this work on your own and do the quantum healing hypnosis trainings and recordings that I've talked about, the link is down below to get started. If you have any thoughts or questions on this, please drop them in the comments below. I would love to hear from you or incorporate it into future videos. And I hope this was helpful. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe. Thank you for being here. I am sending you so much love, and I will see you again on the next video.